What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports 3 Hine Show. And today, joining me, I have Tony Gazza. How you doing today, Tony?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing really good. We have a lot to talk about. With my Bengals winning this past Thursday night against the Miami Dolphins. Your Packers improved to 3-1 after defeating the New England Patriots. So we'll go ahead and get into it here, briefly talking about the Bengals game. They took on the Miami Dolphins this past Thursday. They won 27-15. And this was another game where the Bengals just did not play themselves, but fortunately they were able to get the victory, and that's what matters the most. Joe Mixon had 24 carries for 61 yards, 2.5 yards a carry. His yards per carry this season is 2.7. That is ridiculous. That should not happen. It does not make any sense why it is what it is. Heading into the season, I thought Mixon was due for a breakout year, a career year. But I just don't get how this run game cannot get going. The one good thing is this offense is starting to score more points. And once you add Mixon, getting back to his normal self, our offense should be even better. But Mixon needs to get going quickly because this team cannot be one-dimensional. Because if it's one-dimensional, Burrow is going to be having more passing attempts, and the chances of him getting sacked more is more likely to happen. But when you look at the offensive line, this past 2 weeks, we've played terrific. The first 2 weeks, we gave up 13 sacks. The last 2 weeks, playing against the New York Jets and the Dolphins, we've only gave up 3 sacks. It's almost like the national media overreacted about the Bengals offensive line when Bengals fans knew this offensive line was going to be good. It just needed to take a little bit of time. That's exactly what happened. 3 sacks given up the last 2 weeks is very, very impressive. Our offensive line, you can tell, is playing much better. They're getting more chemistry, they're getting more snaps with each other. And then you look at Burrow. 20, 31, 287, and 2 touchdowns. Don't let the stats deceive you. Burrow did not play that good against the Dolphins. Burrow has not had a really good game the whole season. Burrow, to me, has been really not good at all this year. Bengal fans will say, oh, Burrow's played really good. And you go back from the Steelers game week 1, he absolutely sucked. The Cowboys game, he got outperformed by Cooper Rush, which should never happen at all. And he lost to Cooper Rush. Week 3 against the Jets. He played all right, but, we're talking about the Jets, who don't have a great team. But then you go to the Dolphins this past week. He didn't play great. I think the stats are a little bit deceiving, but he's slightly playing better each game. And I think that is, gives the Bengals hope for this week for a huge matchup against the Ravens on Sunday Night Football, a huge game that could, really determine early on who's the favorite in the AFC North. I still think it's the Bengals. I'm not trying to be biased. Have you seen my videos the past, year or so? I can't stand the Ravens, and I think they're super overrated, and Lamar Jackson is ridiculously overrated, but we're going to kind of talk about that later. T. Higgins, in this Dolphins game really played great. 7 receptions, 124, and a touchdown. He's really been surprising this year. Lots of Bengal fans, I kind of thought overrated him. I kind of think he's in that 12 to 15 range when it comes to wide receivers, but he's been one of the best receivers in the NFL so far this year. Von Bell had 2 interceptions for the Bengals this past week on Thursday against the Dolphins. So he has played really, really good this year. This is, to me, so far his best season of his career. But when you look at this Bengals game, I think the Bengals are very, very fortunate. I really think the Bengals are the most luckiest team in the NFL because the Bengals defeated the Miami Dolphins 27-15. Tua gets hurt. It completely changed the momentum, for the game. It was just kind of a wake-up call, like, holy crap, like that just happened. It's kind of hard for the Dolphins to, bounce back when a horrific injury to Tua. Yes, Teddy Bridgewater did play good in Tua's absence. But when you look how good Tua has played up to this point, I'm not so sure the Bengals win this game if Tua doesn't get hurt. And then you look at the first 3 weeks of the season, the Bengals played Mitchell Trubisky, Cooper Rush, and Joe Flacco. When you look at the NFL, when you look at football, the most important position is obviously quarterback. And when you look at the Bengals, the quarterbacks they've had to face are Mitchell Trubisky, Cooper Rush, Joe Flacco, and really, Teddy Bridgewater. They've had a great opportunity to go 4-0 playing 4 average quarterbacks at best. But unfortunately, they're just 2-2, and I'm not taking full advantage of a great opportunity to start out great and be one of the best teams in the NFL. When you it's crazy. They are very, very lucky right now playing not so good quarterbacks. And now we're playing the Ravens and Jackson, who's easily the best quarterback we faced up to this point. And even those bad quarterbacks, we made Cooper Rush look pretty good. We even made Trubisky look decent. He did not have a turnover playing against the Bengals defense. Flacco wasn't horrible. Bridgewater was pretty good. Tua was decent. So to me, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bengals play against Jackson this week, because the quarterbacks we have faced so far are not good, and we've been very lucky to play these average or so quarterbacks so far. We really could be 4-0, but unfortunately, we did not take full advantage of that. But, the Bengals advanced a 2-2 two-game win streak to defeat the Dolphins 27-15 from Thursday night. And then your Packers, they were able to defeat the Patriots this past Sunday. So what are your kind of thoughts on the Patriots, the Packers improving to 3-1?
Well, a win is a win, right? But at the end of the day, it's very sloppy football. I'm looking at the stats here, and I'll get to Aaron Rodgers in a minute. But looking at Green Bay, we have yet to play a turnover-free game, right? So looking at the stats here, we have 8 total fumbles, right? Half of those, so 4 of those fumbles have been lost. And then Aaron Rodgers has thrown 3 picks in 3 out of the 4 games, which is very not like Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, we went into overtime with the Patriots. Mason Crosby came in clutch. So we won 27-24. But, looking at the Packers, here's how I break down the season so far. So since they added the extra game onto the season, I feel like since the starters don't play in the preseason, Green Bay views the first game of the season as a preseason game, although it's not. Just looking back to last year, the Saints demolished us. But, we ended up going deep into the playoffs. Okay, so here's the deal. I think week 1 was just a preseason game for us, although it was against division rival. But mind you, we were on the road. We were in Minnesota. So we'll get them back at Lambeau and we'll take care of business. But looking at the Bears, I think that was, we own the Bears. Aaron Rodgers is a Chicago Bear owner. So I think that game was a given. But then the Tampa Bay game, that one, I was about to have a heart attack because it came down to Brady with the ball, converting on a 2-point conversion to tie the game and send it into overtime. And I was just having, PTSD flashbacks from the NFC Championship game where they just marched down the field and scored and won the game. So, that was a good win. I think that was a quality win that showed that we had guts and grit. But then looking at this Patriots game, you're going against one of the best coaches in history, Bill Belichick. And it goes to show, although they're 1-3, they're a good football team. Mac Jones is hurt. So, once they get their squad back together, I think they're going to be decent. They're not going to be, competing in the playoffs, but I think, they can pose a threat to win a game against a team that might underestimate them. But looking at it, 3-1, I'm not satisfied as a lot of Packers fans would be, because looking at the stats here, Aaron Rodgers has thrown a pick against the Buccaneers, Patriots, and if I'm not mistaken, Vikings. So, he has yet to play quality football, in my opinion, and I think a large part has to do with not having Devontae Adams because, look at Las Vegas Raiders. They just got their first win of the season, and they really shouldn't have. But I think once this young receiving core gets their SHIT together, that Aaron Rodgers will have confidence in them and he'll start gaining a rhythm on offense. But as of right now, it's kind of like a defensive team. And I'm shocked because Joe Barry has done a great job with this defense. And I think a lot of that started with Mike Pettin when Mike McCarthy brought him on. But, to rely on our defense like that, as a Packer fan, we haven't done that since 2010 and 2011, because since then we haven't had a top 10 defense. So it's a good feeling when you have that. But yes, Aaron Rodgers has, 6 passing touchdowns. So he's passed, 2 touchdowns versus the Patriots, 2 passing touchdowns versus the Buccaneers, and 2 passing touchdowns versus the Bears. So it's not Aaron Rodgers-esque. I'm expecting a lot more out of him, but with the circumstances and, Sammy Watkins is out until I think week 7, week 8. The wide receiving core can't catch a break. We just got Christian Watson back, and I think we are finding ways to implement him into the offense because, it's a big confidence killer when you drop a wide open passing touchdown on the first play of the game and you burn arguably one of the best cornerbacks in history, Patrick Peterson, on the first play. So they're doing a lot of end round stuff with him. So putting him in motion, and he's very fast. So I like what we're doing with our offense, but I'm not satisfied with the quality of football we're playing.
And when you look at Christian Watson, have a huge drop first play of the game week 1, that's huge to bounce back from that. Because when you look at rookies, like plays like that can absolutely kill your confidence for an entire season. Because when you look at a guy like John Ross for the Bengals, early on struggled and just was never really able to get that confidence back. And then he really didn't do much of anything, and he's not even with the team anymore. And he was a first-round pick, had so much high expectation, and first-round pick. Just like Watson was a top pick as well. But you're talking about the Packers wide receiver position. You said Sammy Watkins is out till week 7. Some of these guys cannot catch a pass that well. Would you want the Packers to sign Beckham, or do you think they should kind of wait until maybe closer towards the playoffs?
Well, he's sending a lot of messages on Twitter that indicate to me that he has interest in playing for the Packers. And if he came onto our team, I mean, he would be the number 1 receiver. I mean, looking at it, like when he was with the Rams, they had Cooper Kupp, they had Robert Woods, they had a plethora of weapons. I mean, here, Aaron Rodgers makes his weapons. His weapons don't make him. So he's, really took Robert Tonyan and made him into a number 1 tight end. Romeo Doubs had a breakout game versus Tampa, and I was shocked. That was a great game for the rookie. But I think we should wait a little bit because OBJ's market's not too hot right now. There's not a lot of teams that are pursuing him. And if there are, he probably wouldn't have interest in them. I mean, even if Cleveland showed him high interest, his friend Jarvis Landry isn't there anymore. Right. So I think that would steer him away from there, even with the whole Deshaun Watson situation, So I think Aaron Rodgers and OBJ would be explosive. I mean, I couldn't imagine how many passing touchdowns they would have. I mean, yeah, OBJ's torn his ACL twice. He's not the same player he was in 2016, but I think that would be a great signing because just to have the presence and the name on the team, that automatically requires double coverage. Even if he's just just a decoy. There we go. Even if he's just a decoy on the field, I'm more than happy with that because that opens up plays for Randall Cobb, which he's been making a lot of plays in his 9th or 10th year in the league. I think, once we get Sammy Watkins back, that would help him a lot. Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson would get a lot of open field if we got OBJ because he requires double coverage, whether that's man coverage and a safety on him or, you help him in whatever way, So I think, yes, we should sign him.
When you look at Beckham, there's kind of 3 teams that are intriguing when, there's rumors about Beckham could sign with. One's the Packers, one is the Giants, that's been kind of, been talked about some, with their success so far. And you already kind of mentioned Landry with the Saints. But when you look at the Saints, they're 1-3. Jameis Winston's hurt. I don't know why you wouldn't go play with the Saints if Andy Dalton would be your quarterback if Winston's out. I mean, the way Winston throws the ball, you could get tons of targets. I mean, he throws it seems like more than anybody else. But their bad start already 1-3. It's going to be kind of hard to bounce back and get into a playoff position if you don't know how long Winston's going to be out for. Then you look at the Giants. They've been really, really impressive so far. 3-1 despite a horrible offensive line. Daniel Jones at times has actually looked decent, which kind of surprises me a little bit. But at the same time, I feel like we see this every single season. There's 1 or 2 teams after the first 4 or 5 weeks, that could be a playoff team. And then you look at it, and then it's like they finish the rest of the season with only 2 or 3 wins. I'm not saying the Giants will do that, but we have seen that time and time again. Look at the Panthers last season. The Panthers last season started 3-0. The rest of the season, they won 2 games. So there's instances where we see this, and I mean that could happen with the Giants. Who knows? But then with the Packers are 3-1, and clearly have the best quarterback out of those 3 teams. And if Odell Beckham Jr. is wanting to attempt to try to go back to his 2016 self, be an elite wide receiver, be a top 10 receiver, what he was with New York Giants, the Packers are the clear destination to make the most sense because you're playing with the best quarterback. You're going to get the most targets. And when you look at the Saints, Michael Thomas has been hurt some, but you have Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Jarvis Landry. If you play with the Saints, you're not going to be getting the targets as if you were with the Packers. Even look at the Giants. They have some okay wide receivers, but not great. But with a crappy offensive line and Daniel Jones is really inaccurate, there's going to be times you might get targets, but there might not be, catchable balls. The Packers make the most sense, and it's not even close. I don't know if the Packers would make sense to sign him right now, but once his market kind of starts catching steam, maybe let's say middle of November, trying to get him used to the scheme and stuff like that, getting prepared for the playoffs, I think that would make a ton of sense. And if Beckham's wanting to, play like he used to, I don't know why you wouldn't sign with the Packers when you could play with one of the best quarterbacks of all time, who has the best touchdown interception ratio of all time, a guy who does not throw many bad passes compared to these other 2 quarterbacks. Jameis Winston threw 30 picks in 1 season. It'd take 5 or 6 years for Rodgers to throw 30 picks in the season. It's crazy, but Beckham should definitely sign with the Packers. It's really a no-brainer. It would really kind of be dumb if he didn't end up signing with Green Bay because, it gives him a chance to possibly maybe win a Super Bowl as well.
Well, here's my contrary to that. The only thing I can see him deterring OBJ from signing with Green Bay is the small town, the small market team. A lot of people don't sign with Green Bay because of that reason. And you look at OBJ's history, New York, big market, big city. LA, big market, big city. Cleveland, it's still a big city. It's not a big market, but it is a bigger city than Green Bay. So, mind you, Green Bay has a population of 100,000. So, maybe it would be a nice change in his life. But we saw with Devontae Adams, the whole reason he claims that he left Green Bay is because of the travel, because his family's in California and he had to travel. Lost me there. I got a phone call again. I don't know why people keep calling me, but getting back to my point, I think, like you said, it would be really not intelligent for OBJ not to sign with the Packers. I think his best bet would be to sign with Green Bay, but like I said, he's been exposed to New York and LA, and he seems like that kind of guy, nightlife, popping bottles, So I don't know. We'll see. But maybe he's getting sick of it like I am. Maybe he's just like, I need a change in my life. I need to go to Green Bay, focus on football. Because in Green Bay, that's all you really have to do. You're there for your job.
So it should be pretty interesting with Beckham and the Packers. Even if Beckham doesn't sign with the Packers, maybe the Packers make a move at a wide receiver, maybe closer to the trade deadline. And looking at some games here, week 5, it's absolutely crazy. We're already heading into week 5. This seems like a super, super fast season so far. But, like I said, the Bengals take on the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football in Baltimore. Like I've said before, I try not to be biased. I am a realist. I tell stuff how it is. When you look at the Bengals, I've said they don't look that good. Joe Burrow does not look like his normal self, but he is improving each week. When you look at Joe Mixon, he is just not getting it going. 2.7 yards per carry is pitiful. That should never happen for a top 10 running back like Mixon, who has the best, offensive line he's ever had. And then we take on the Ravens. The Ravens are 2-2 right now. They have won games over the Jets and the Patriots. They have lost games to the Miami Dolphins 42-38, and they lost games to Buffalo Bills. They lost to Buffalo this past week 23-20. When you look at the Ravens, when they play two okay teams, they won. But when it matters most, and they play two really good teams, they just could not live up to the hype and then lost both of those games. When you look at the past week against the Buffalo Bills, they had a 17-point lead. I don't care who you're playing. You should not be able to blow a 17-point lead. They blow a 17-point lead and lose to Buffalo. Everybody loves to talk about how, Harbaugh's questionable decision on fourth down. They should have kicked a field goal. I don't think it was a horrible play call because there was this wide receiver wide open in the back of the end zone. And then Lamar Jackson threw the ball faster and was able to, find a target quicker. Maybe they would have scored a touchdown. But when it matters most, Lamar Jackson, when it matters most, he cannot step up to the plate and, help the Baltimore Ravens win a game. When the most important plays, Jackson cannot step up, and this Ravens team cannot step up. This Ravens team, I said it all year last year, they're the most overrated team last year, and it wasn't even close. So far this season, I think they're one of the most overrated teams in the league. You all can call me a hater. That's cool. I am a hater. I'm not even going to lie. I totally am. The Baltimore Ravens have lost 5 straight games at home. That is ridiculous. That is very unlike Baltimore. And something else, it's so interesting to me. After the first 2 weeks of the season, national media were already calling the Bengals the worst offensive line in NFL history. Oh, Burrow's on pace to get sacked over 100 times. All right, look how much has already changed. He was sacked 3 times the last 2 games. Now look at the Baltimore Ravens. In 4 games, a quarter of the way through the 2022 season, the Baltimore Ravens have the worst pass defense in NFL history. They're giving up 315 passing yards a game. But we just don't talk about that. But we're talking about the Bengals anytime we get. That makes total sense. But when you look at the Bengals last year when they took on the Baltimore Ravens, Joe Burrow threw for 525 passing yards. Oh, well, Baltimore secondary was hurt. I don't care if you're playing a first, second, or third string corner. You should not be giving up 525 passing yards. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. And then you look at Jamar Chase. In 2 games against the Baltimore Ravens last season, he had 15 catches for 326 yards and a touchdown. And the secondary for Baltimore is somehow worse compared to last season. It doesn't even make sense. But, I mean, it's true. And it's so crazy. When you look at the Bengals, the last 3 games they have faced Lamar Jackson. Our defense coordinator, Lou Anamoro, he has had a terrific game plan against Jackson. The last 3 games, Lamar Jackson's completion percentage is just 51%. That is horrible for a quarterback. And then you look at his career average is 64. 13% lower than his normal. He's only throwing basically 50% passes, completions, when he's facing against the Bengals. And one of those games, in the last 3 games, there was a game where the Bengals only allowed 3 rushing yards to Lamar Jackson, a guy who's averaging over 60 rushing yards a game and has more rushing yards this season than Joe Mixon does. The Bengals are getting better each game. They're not there yet, but they're slowly improving. The offensive line is getting better. Joe Burrow is slowly getting better. Mixon has to get it going. T. Higgins has been stepping up. Tyler Boyd has been stepping up. This defense has been getting much, much better these last couple weeks. And it's so interesting. Something else when you look at Lou Anamoro and the Bengals defense. People love to talk about, oh, well, Jackson, the Ravens were hurt last year and all that. But even when they were healthy, the Bengals dominated the whole freaking game last year and in Baltimore. And when you look at the Bengals last year, they sacked Lamar Jackson more than any other team has sacked Lamar Jackson. So when you have his completion percentage is just 51% the last 3 games. He's got sacked the most he ever has the last time the Bengals played against him. They have a 5 straight losing games at home. It's so interesting. And Jackson only had 3 rushing yards against the Bengals not too long ago. All signs are pointing to the Bengals to win this game. And I don't really get how the Ravens are picked to win by 3 points. I know when it comes to gambling, the home team gets a 3-point advantage automatically. So this was like a neutral site game or something like that. It'd be even. It'd be a toss-up. But I really think the Bengals are going to win this game. They are not there yet. They're getting better each game. This Baltimore team is consistently the most overrated team in the NFL. But I do think they're going to win. But winning in Baltimore isn't easy, especially on a primetime game. I know they have 5 straight losses at home, but it's still going to be a difficult game to win. But I think they're going to be able to step up to the plate and deliver when it matters most, go to 3-2 and take control of the AFC North. Should be an interesting game. I cannot wait for it. I really think the Bengals are going to win this game. I don't see the Ravens winning this one, really at all.
I think the only reason the Ravens are favored, like you said, home field advantage, and then it's all by stats. So, points per game, Bengals have 22.8, Ravens have 29.8, and then yards per game, Bengals have 346.8, and then the Baltimore Ravens have 359.3. So I think it's all because of the stats and the numbers. I don't think it necessarily has to do with the teams itself. I think it's just all about, what's on paper. But, when it's prime time and the lights are brightest, we'll see if Baltimore can live up to it. But, I'm confident in the Bengals. I'm a fan of what Joe Burrow's doing. I wish you guys would have won that Super Bowl, man. I was rooting for you guys, but unfortunately, it wasn't in the football gods' decision for you guys to win it. But asking a Bengals fan this, what are your feelings about making a Super Bowl comeback? Like, are you guys confident you guys are going to make it back this year or no?
As of right now, I'm not that confident. Like, there's nothing that really say, like, holy crap, this team is going to want to go to the Super Bowl and this time win it. Because when you look at the AFC, there's just so many talented teams. Like, the Dolphins are a very talented team. I mean, I know they lost to us, but with a healthy Tua, the way he's played so far, that's a scary team. Look at the Chargers when they're healthy. The Chiefs have been impressive so far. There's teams who I'm not really that shocked. They're kind of struggling early. When you look at the Broncos, they're kind of struggling early, the Raiders. But once they start to get going, those teams can be dangerous. The Bills are playing amazing right now. If we were in the NFC, I would feel much more comfortable. But just the amount of talent in the AFC kind of concerns me. There's so many great teams. Like in the AFC, you're going to have to get at least 10 wins to be a wild card team. In the NFC, you can maybe get 9. It's there's a big difference between the two conferences. But I feel like this is really interesting. Nobody's talking about this. Feels like I'm the only Bengal podcast show, whatever, talking about this. The Bengals really have a 2-year window. They have this year and they have next year. Because after next season, they have just so many players who are free agents. They have Akeem Davis-Gaither. They have Logan Wilson. They have T. Higgins. They have Jonah Williams, who Bengal fans love. I don't get it. He's been absolutely horrible this season. But they just have so many players. I believe they have Joe Mixon, who's a free agent. There's so many more players. I have a list. I've done videos about it before, talking about there's so many players that are going to be free agents after the 2023 season. And the odds of the Bengals signing even half those guys are very, very slim. So really, you have a really 2-year window, this year and next season, to get you Super Bowl. Can you win a Super Bowl after that? Absolutely. You're always going to have a chance to win a Super Bowl as long as you have a Joe Burrow as your quarterback. But I feel like these next 2 years are very important. The Bengals get one because it's going to be way harder to win one after this 2-year window than it is right now. I definitely think the way they're improving each game, and they can maybe be a Super Bowl favorite. I think they can maybe win a Super Bowl if they continue to get better. But the way, just looking at it right now, I don't really see them being in a Super Bowl. But it's kind of how it was last season. Week 2 we lost to the Bears, and the sky's falling down. We were playing like crap. The season's over, and then slowly but surely we got our act together and we really picked it up. And towards the end of the season, we were the hardest team in the NFL. So it's interesting. As of right now, I don't see us as a Super Bowl team, but that could very well change heading in maybe towards the middle of November or something like that.
Yeah, I'm very worried for my Green Bay Packers. If they don't win it this year, the window's closed, because we should have had it last year or the year before that. And, we lost a lot of pieces, and I just don't see a Super Bowl contending team. And maybe the defense, but the offense definitely not. I mean, it's looking back at it, it's not like what we had in 2010 with Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, James Jones, Jermichael Finley, even though he was out of the Super Bowl, Jordy Nelson. The run game was non-existent, but that passing game was lethal, man. And, we had an undefeated season in 2011 until losing to the Kansas City Chiefs, which I still don't know how we lost to them with Kyle Orton at quarterback. But it's just not the same. And I don't know what that has to do with. I mean, we brought back Tom Clements, from, a while back ago. Aaron Rodgers handpicked him, handpicked Randall Cobb, but I don't know. If we don't get it this year, I think our window's closed, because it's hard to win a Super Bowl. It's not easy. Green Bay went 15-1 the season after winning the Super Bowl. Didn't make it back. And, I think if we lose again, like let's just say we make it to the NFC Championship again. We make it back to the NFC Championship game again and we lose it, that's just going to be the whole narrative around Aaron Rodgers' career. It's going to overshadow all of his successes, like 4 NFL MVPs, Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, 15, 16-time Pro Bowl. It's just going to be overshadowed by you couldn't get it done in the NFC Championship games. So I'd rather not even make it back to the NFC Championship game if we're going to lose it, because I don't want that narrative to be, oh, you guys can't win a game when it matters. But I just forgot to brought this up, but it came to me. So obviously the NFL's Player Association has fired the unaffiliated doctor that consulted or evaluated the Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. So obviously that was scary to see. I mean, the first week, well, it was on Sunday and then they played on Thursday. So on Sunday when he got up and he was stumbling around and his offensive lineman had to pick him up, that was concerning. But then for them to insert him into the game when you have a veteran quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, in the wings, which I don't know why they're not confident in him to go out there. But, I mean, Tua, he could have passed away from that. I mean, that's serious stuff. I mean, I've never seen a player's hands or body do what it did on Thursday. And it was very concerning. And I'm glad they fired that doctor who evaluated him. But, it could have been a whole different story. I mean, look at that Ryan Shazier. I mean, he got paralyzed, that guy, from a neck injury. I mean, God forbid it happened, but Tua was very lucky that, he didn't pass away from this because, I mean, you look at the CTE cases and what's going on. I mean, people die from that. I mean, there was a wide receiver who used to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Vincent Jackson, who passed away recently from CTE. Junior Seau, or my apologies if I'm butchering his name, but, he played for the Chargers, linebacker, and passed away from CTE. So, it's concerning when you see that. I don't know. What was your reaction to that?
It was interesting because when you look at of a player's as if he's frozen like that when his hands are up. I've only seen it a couple of times. I think Austin Collie was one for the Colts years and years ago. But when you look at something like this, like the Austin Collie hit, and I think there was a hit on Josh Cribbs maybe years ago. Like there's a couple of hits that kind of stand out to me. Like, holy crap! Like there's a difference between like hitting somebody and then there's like, holy crap! Like that guy is seriously injured. He's going to leave on a stretcher type of deal. But when you look at the Tua hit, it wasn't really bad. That was the crazy part. And the fact that the Tua hit wasn't that bad, and I've seen much, much, much worse hits this season. And the fact that he had a concussion that bad kind of tells me that I feel like there was already kind of damage done, and he had a concussion Sunday, and they just played him anyway. Because you don't, to me, I just don't feel like you get tackled like that, and then you get a concussion that bad that quickly. Like I feel like something was already kind of wrong to begin with, because that's something you just don't see. I mean, yes, then the Austin Collie and the Josh Cripps thing happened, but those hits were a billion times worse. This was a normal hit. Yeah, his head did hit the ground, but I mean, it didn't look like it hit that hard, and it was really crazy. I was coming home from work and they were talking about it, and at first the radio announcers were talking about as if it was his finger, because you when you looked at the hit, it didn't really look like he hit his head that hard, and then when they came up from the commercial, they realized it was his head and everything like that. But it's just crazy. I feel like this season more than other seasons, we've seen way harder hits and just way more like possible situations of CTE and concussions in years past. Whether it's the NFL or really college, there's been a couple of horrible college hits this season, but it's just really crazy. I don't know why the Dolphins put two in. Like, there's a difference of a player's wanting to play, like, I don't know, with a sprained ankle or something like that, something that you can play off of. But when you're playing with a concussion that clearly is much more serious than anybody thought, that's something that, even though a player wants to play, the medical staff should absolutely shut that down the second he tries to complain and makes his case for playing. It's really ridiculous he played. And the staff 100% should have been fired. And I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they got, in trouble for their really bad actions.
Yeah, and I was at a loss of words. I mean, I've never seen that before. I thought he died. Like, I'm serious. I thought something that bad happened. I was like, man, is he gonna die? Like, that's what my first thought was, because obviously there was blunt force trauma there Sunday. And for a quick 4-day turnaround to get another concussion, I mean, that's negligent and irresponsible on behalf of the Miami Dolphins training staff, as well as the unaffiliated neurotrauma doctor who evaluated him. But looking back at it, I mean, you mentioned Collier and Josh Cribbs back in the day, but you got to look at it. I mean, they were wearing older helmets. Like, those didn't have the updated technology that they have now. I mean, Tua was wearing a Riddell SpeedFlex Precision Fit, and that's kind of the best of the best, other than the Vices that Patrick Mahomes wears. I mean, it's night and day difference with the technologies that they were wearing and the chin straps they're wearing. So for Tua to get hit, like, not even that hard, and I guess it just hit him in the right spot, because, people think, oh, he hit his head not as bad as, to say as, someone else. Like, remember that hit, Vontaze Burfict hit on Antonio Brown?
Mm-hmm.
That was worse, I think. But, I mean, that's another time when I saw someone go limp. That's another time AB went limp. And I think with his antics that he's doing right now, AB is suffering from CTE, because he's exposing himself in Dubai and taking his shirt off on the field, running off. I mean, something's not right up here. It's a screw loose. But I'm just happy Tua lived to see another day, because people think, oh, he couldn't have died. No, he really could have, because people die from blunt force trauma every day. It happens. So, God forbid he didn't pass away. I mean, we've seen some scary situations. Look at Teddy Bridgewater, almost had to have his leg amputated. And, even Alex Smith had to get like 20-something surgeries on his leg from a broken femur. I mean, almost had to get his leg, So it's a scary look. I'm just glad he's okay, but it should be talked about more. It's not getting talked about. I mean, people are just like, yeah, he'll be fine. No, he really won't be, because let's say this re-aggravates it. Let's say he plays not this week because he's out, but the week after. I mean, he might not be able to live life after football.
And you mentioned Bridgewater. Bridgewater was so crazy. It was non-contact, and if they did not
Yeah.
get there 15 minutes later, they said he could have amputated his leg. Absolutely crazy.
Scary.
And
It's scary.
with Tua, I saw something about 3 or 4 days ago. I think it was by Tom Pelissero. They said Tua possibly could have ended up playing this week. Like the doctors could have cleared him or something. I'm like, what? That would be so stupid.
No
Like
way.
I don't know anything about hockey, like at all. I know who Sidney Crosby is, but when you look at his concussions, he's a guy who could have been. He's one of the best players in hockey, but with him having concussions so much, that's kind of hurt his career so much because he's been out so much due to concussions, and it's just so crazy. Was Tua. I mean, hopefully he's all right, but with this medical staff with the Dolphins, hopefully they don't play him until he's 100% like better. He clears concussion protocol and something like that. But it should be interesting with Tua. And you mentioned Bridgewater. I don't get why the Dolphins were not more content with Bridgewater starting and having the risk of Tua re-aggravating this concussion, which clearly unfortunately happened. And then Bridgewater is all right. He's not great, but he's one of the better backups. And they played pretty decent with Bridgewater against the Dolphins. And to the point, like, I thought the Bengals possibly could end up losing that game the way he was playing early on. And, we're four weeks into the season, heading into week 5 tomorrow night. The Dolphins are a very impressive team so far. The Eagles are an impressive team so far. So to you, who do you think the most impressive team so far in the NFL after week 4 is?
Oh, man, it's tough to say because looking at the slate, I'm going to have to say the Philadelphia Eagles as of right now. But, that can all change because, like you said, the Panthers started off 3-0 and then only won 2 games for the rest of the season. So that could be the case with Philly. But as of right now, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they're the only undefeated team left, right?
Yeah.
So obviously that is very impressive, so I'm going to have to say Philly, but it's going to change. Obviously I'm a Packer fan, so I'm biased, even though I shouldn't be, I am. I think Green Bay might be, if they can win in London versus the Giants, which I'm sure they will. If they don't, I'm not too concerned because it's a London game. I'll still be up for it. I'll still watch it, but it's not a game where I'm like, oh man, they have to win this one. Because, honestly, I know they're going to play Rodgers, but to be honest with you, look at what the Saints did. They didn't play Kamara. They didn't play Jameis. They didn't play Michael Thomas. They didn't play their 3 stars in London. So if I'm the Packers, I'm like, this is great. Put Jordan Love in, get him some reps. But they're going to play Rodgers. I know they will. But I think Philly has the most impressive record, right? But, I'm going to have to say my Packers because look at that win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That might be arguably the best win of the season so far.
And you mentioned, the Packers and the Giants. I feel like this week is a very kind of early indication how good this Giants team actually is. They're 3-1, very impressive right now. Let's say they beat the Packers, then we're all of a sudden like, holy crap, maybe this Giants team, is serious. If they improved to 4-1 after a great win against one of the better teams in the league so far, the Packers, that would be a huge win for them. The Eagles are the only undefeated team in the NFL, but to me, I think the best team in the NFL, I know they just lost, but I really think it's the Miami Dolphins. I don't think they might not be the best team, but I'm the most impressed with them. They bring in a new head coach. Tua has played great. When you look at the Dolphins, I think they, if they would have beat the Bengals on Thursday, they would have had the most impressive 4-0 start in NFL history. Because when you look at week 1, they humiliated the Patriots. They defeated the best head coach in NFL history. Week 2, they beat the Ravens in Baltimore. Jackson, who is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. You go to week 3, they defeat the Buffalo Bills. 21-19. The Bills, who at that point looked like the best team in the NFL, and some say they might be the best team in the NFL. And then you go to week 4, who's to say they maybe would have beat the Bengals if Tua did not get injured, a team who was just in the AFC Championship game. I'm very, very impressed with the Dolphins right now. They had such a great offseason. It's one of those situations where they just have way more talented players than what you think. Last season they had an okay roster, but this season, they have a top 10 roster probably in the NFL. And Tua has played great. Bridgewater's played all right. This week, they play the Bills. That should be a great game. Excuse me, they don't play the Bills. They play the the Jets this week. They should be able to beat the Jets this week. If they improve to 4-1, and then maybe a healthy Tua comes back, depending when he comes back, maybe this Dolphins team can. Maybe be a legitimate threat to the Buffalo Bills for the AFC East. I really think this Dolphins team, to me, is the most impressive team so far in the NFL. The Eagles are really good. They're 4-0. But to me, when I look at the Eagles and I look at the Dolphins, I think the Dolphins have played much harder competition and better teams. I know they have one loss that the Eagles don't. But I think the Dolphins are so far the most impressive team in the NFL. So when looking at the most disappointing teams after week 4, who would you say is the most disappointing team?
The Lions are a laughing stock as always. 1-3. Jared Goff and the Matthew Stafford trade was a steal of the century. Look at what the Rams did with Matthew Stafford. And, I don't think it was the players necessarily. I think it was the teams, and it goes to show. So obviously the Lions, they're never going to be anything. I'm sorry to say that. No offense to any Lions fans. But, I'm just calling it how it is. The Commanders had like a game where I was like, wow, I was impressed with Carson Wentz, and now they're 1-3. So I'm writing them off. The Saints, they have a good core of talent. Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and Jameis Winston, but everyone's hurt. They're not playing well. And, I'm getting messed up on fantasy football, which I think that was the point for me because I'm trying not to win, right? Because I want everybody else to have a chance at the cash prize winnings. But, there's times where I'm just like, I'm laughing at myself because I don't really care. I'm just like, whatever. But Alvin Kamara was like, oh, he's a 50-50 chance to play. And then I just leave him in my lineup and then he's out. But the London game was at 5:30 a.m. my time. And I was asleep. And I wake up and he had 0 points. I was like, and then I have J.K. Dobbins on my bench, and then he explodes for like 22 points. I'm like, what the heck? So, it's funny because I don't take it serious. I just do it for fun. The whole reason I did it was to get Aaron Rodgers, to be honest with you. But there's a lot of people that do take it serious, and they're not happy. They're upset because, they drafted Kamara, they drafted these guys, and they're not producing. So I thought that was kind of funny. But so those are my 3 teams. The Panthers too. So the 4 bottom teams in the NFC are disappointments. And then looking here at the AFC, the Texans, you have 0 wins, 3 losses, and 1 tie. That's abysmal. The Steelers, I think they pulled the plug on Mitchell Trubisky a little bit too early and just throwing Kenny Pickett into the fire because Mike Tomlin went against everything he was saying. He was saying, we're not going to put Kenny Pickett in. He's not ready. And then 2 weeks later, he turns around and puts him in the fire. It's like, he folded. He gave in to the pressure of the Steeler Nation. And I think that's a joke because Mike Tomlin has been at the helm for so long now that he should say, no, we're going to stick with Mitchell Trubisky. He is the veteran, and I just think they folded. I think that's embarrassing. Patriots, the record isn't great, but, they have the best head coach in history. So I'll give them a pass because Mac Jones is hurt. I think the Raiders have been terrible. I'm in Las Vegas and I laugh because everyone all of a sudden are Raiders fans. And I'm true to my colors. I'm a Packer fan until I pass away. So I just think it's funny seeing all these people in Vegas. Like, they're like, before the season, they were like, oh, it's our year, Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. But this is the reality. You're 1-3, my friend. And Devontae Adams is not happy because Hall of Famer Derek Carr, hasn't been. I mean, he's found ways to get him the ball. I mean, yeah, Devontae Adams has had big games, but the record shows. I mean, Green Bay's 3-1. The Raiders are 1-3. You tell me, And sorry to cut you off, but the Colts as well. I mean, Matt Ryan, they had one good win, and then they had a tie with the Texans. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Devontae Adams would never, ever, ever have a game where he had one catch for 2 yards with Rodgers. That would just never, ever happen. But, talking about the most disappointing teams, you mentioned the Lions. I don't know the most disappointing team, but to me, it's just at what point do people start talking about Campbell like he cannot win one-possession games? Half of their losses last year were by one possession. All 3 of their losses this year have been by one possession. At one point, you start realizing, you know what? When it comes to close games and it comes down to it, we need to really start picking it up because I don't know his record when it comes to one possession games, but I know it's absolutely horrible. Looking at some other teams here, the Steelers. The Steelers are 1-3. This makes absolutely no sense. They should not be 1-3 right now, and their only win is against the Bengals. All 3 of their losses have been by one possession. You talked about Kenny Pickett bringing them in too early. That did not make any sense. The Steelers were more than capable. I think they could have won that game if they just would have kept Trubisky in. He didn't suck that game against the Jets. He's played worse games this season. I feel like it was a holy crap. We might actually start 1-3. We lose this game, so let's put in Pickett.
They panicked.
And 10 of 13, 120 yards, 3 interceptions, and 2 rushing touchdowns. When you look at Pickett, I don't know what you expect from him. I mean, his completion percentage was good. 3 picks is a major issue, especially throwing just 13 attempts. 2 rushing touchdowns. I don't think he played horrible, given the fact I don't think really anybody expected him to play this week, especially just the middle of the game. Like, if you would have won this week, you'd be 2-2. With Pickett starting this week, they are picked to lose by 14 points. I just don't get it. The most difficult game of your schedule so far, that's the first game you're going to start Kenny Pickett. To me, you should have played Trubisky the remainder of the Jets game. Have Trubisky, basically take the fall, sacrifice himself against the Bills. And then after that, you have Trubisky. Because like I said earlier, when you have rookies, especially quarterbacks, when they have a really dud performance to start out their kind of career, it takes a lot for them to get back their confidence. Putting Kenny Pickett under the fire, playing against the Buffalo Bills, who are the best defense right now. The Bills are arguably the best team in the NFL. That is really risky. That is super stupid. And that is very, very, very unlike Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is one of the best head coaches in the NFL. You would not expect him to do something this dumb. If you're going to have him come in, have him come out after the Bills game, the week after the Bills game. This makes no sense. You're setting up Pickett to fail early and, really have lack of confidence early on, which is very bad because, I mean, you're probably not going to beat the Bills. Like, let's face it, this offense for the Steelers isn't good. Najee Harris has not really been what we kind of thought he would this season. But this defense might keep you in the game. Your offense is going to have to step up. And I just don't think this offense can step up when you have Kenny Pickett, his first ever start going against this amazing Bills team. But I definitely think the Steelers are one of the more disappointing teams so far, especially to me, the Steelers are the Steelers, the Patriots are the Patriots. Both of these teams are 1-3, but no matter what, all these teams are always going to be good. It's very surprising that both of these teams have such a bad record when they could be much, much better so far after the first 4 weeks. Most disappointing teams. You mentioned the Raiders. The Raiders are a disappointing team. 1-3. All 3 of their losses have been by one possession. That's so crazy. So many teams, so many games. Just have one thing went the other way. A 1-3 team could be 4-0 right now. It's really crazy. There's been so many close games so far this season. The Raiders are one. The Colts, I think, are definitely one. I mean, they only have one win after the first 4 weeks, and that was against the Chiefs. It makes no sense. You get shut out by the Jaguars, but you beat the Chiefs. The logic in that is crazy. But when you look at the Colts, like the Colts are a team who have been all right. To me, I kind of thought they were the favorites and the AFC South heading into the season, but they have just not looked at it at all. I mean, their coach, Frank Wright, at what point do you maybe consider, if they don't make the playoffs, maybe firing him? Because I know the Colts have been decent these past several seasons, but they should be able to get over the hump at some point. Matt Ryan, the Colts have a good offensive line, but Matt Ryan looks like one of the worst seasons he's ever had. Perhaps his final season in the NFL, his first season without, being on the Atlanta Falcons team, he could maybe hurt his legacy a tad bit by switching teams and just so far having the worst season ever. But there's lots of, disappointing teams so far. When you look at, other teams, it's interesting. You mentioned Washington. I wouldn't say they're really disappointing because, I mean, they didn't really have high expectations, but I would kind of expect a slightly better performance so far from Washington. But when I'm looking at the most disappointing teams, I think the Steelers are definitely towards the top because, yes, the Raiders have sucked, the Colts have sucked. But when you just look at the Steelers and the Patriots, this is something we haven't seen from the Steelers and Patriots in a very, very long time. This is something you don't see from some of the most, well-ran teams in NFL history. To both start off 1-3, it's very shocking and just really not normal to see. But I feel like there's several disappointing teams, there's several most impressive teams after week 4. But we are heading into week 5 tomorrow, where the Broncos take on the Indianapolis Colts. So, any kind of final thoughts or anything like this before we kind of wrap it up?
Let's see here. Bear with me one moment. So, I mean, looking at the Broncos, they're not impressive to me. I thought they would be a lot more better than they are. Russell Wilson has struggled. Their own home crowd has booed them. I mean, that when your home crowd's booing you, it has a lot to say with your performance. So I think they might be also one of the more disappointing teams as well, even though they're 2-2. But everyone had so much hype behind Russ and the Broncos that it is kind of shocking. And it's weird to see Russell Wilson in a Broncos uniform. It is. Like, I still think of, like when you wake up, you're so used to Russ with the Seahawks, Brady with the Patriots. That's why I'm happy that Aaron Rodgers stayed a Packer, because I just couldn't imagine him not being a Packer. Like, it's just very weird. Like, when Brett Favre left and he was on the Vikings, like, it was just like, whoa, like, it's not right. Well, he went to the Jets first, and then the scandal happened, and but it's just very weird. So this Thursday night football game, I'm assuming the Broncos will win. Home field advantage. So, and it's prime time. I'll probably watch it, but it's not going to be a good game. The Colts are going to be. I mean, they have a great running back, but outside of that, I mean, Matt Ryan's washed up. Their coach, not so good. So I think that the Broncos, obviously, they should be favored to win, which they are. But I think, especially with the altitude, Broncos have this in the bag.
And when you look at the Broncos, I think they're one of the more disappointing teams as well. The past couple of years, I've been very, very high on the Broncos hype train. Russell Wilson has always been one of my favorite players in the NFL. And when he was announced that he was traded to the Broncos, I'm not going to say I was happy, but I was very intrigued by it for a quarterback I've liked for really ever since he came out of the draft in 2012. And then the Broncos, who I thought could be good. They just needed that quarterback, and they finally get it. But so far, they just not been able to really work really well. They're 2-2, but in those 2 wins, they've looked like absolute crap. They have played horrible. Their wins are against the 49ers, which, I mean, both those teams really played bad that game. And the other one is against the only winless team in the NFL, and the Houston Texans. I think it'll take a little while for Russell Wilson to get used, to the new head coach, new scheme, and stuff like that. When you're with the team for so long and a system for so long, it kind of takes a while to get used to a new system. But it's really interesting with the Broncos. Actually, one other impressive team to me, I think, is the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, they're 2-2 right now. And that's not a great record. When you look, we're talking about some teams having disappointing seasons so far. We're 2-2, but we're talking about some impressive teams with 2-2. The Seahawks, to me, I thought they were going to win like 2-3 games max the whole season. I know their wins. They beat the Lions, who we kind of talked about haven't really been good, and they beat the Broncos. And I know that's only 2 wins, and they haven't played great, but I'm surprised they're 2-2 so far, given the fact that they don't have a great roster. Geno Smith has actually played decent, which is kind of surprising to me. But there's several very impressive teams so far heading to Week 5, and a couple of disappointing teams so far heading into Week 5 tomorrow. Like I said, with the Broncos and Colts, I have the Broncos not winning well as well. If the Colts lose this one, I mean they're 1-3-1. They're in some deep crap, and they would really have to get it going to even win a division. Which when you look at the division right now, I mean the Titans are starting to pick it up a bit. The Jaguars have kind of played all right so far, but should be interesting. So we kind of talked about Kenny Pickett debuting for the Steelers, and why we both think that was kind of bad for Pittsburgh. Most disappointing teams, most impressive teams. Kind of previewing the Bengals game here between them and the Ravens on Sunday night, talking about the Packers this past week between the Patriots. So, Tony, can you kind of tell some of the listeners where they can follow you on social media and everything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I no longer have Tony Gazza TV. That got deleted on Instagram because copyright, which, I messed with the UFC and they were like, no, we're shutting it down. So, no hard feelings, Dana. But other than that, you can find me at Green Bay Packers TV. That is the account where I repost stuff for the Packers and kind of do my own posts about who's in and who's out and updates. You can also find me at Antonio William Gaza on Instagram. That is my main account. I have a Facebook, but that's private. I'm not giving that out. I have Twitter, but I don't use it. Snapchat's private. YouTube, if you want to subscribe, go to Tony G TV. But it's been inactive, so those are my social media platforms you can find me at.
Yeah, make sure to go check out Tony on his social media platforms. Follow me, the Sports Behind Show, on Instagram and S Behind Show on Twitter. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're new to the channel or if you've seen my videos before, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Like this video, I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, I will see you all next time on the Sports Behind Show.